The ship landed on Prime just as the twin suns began to set. Lieutenant Park stood at the viewing window and watched the amber forest stretch out below her like an ocean of gold and orange. The trees were taller than any she had seen before. Some of them reached so high that their tops disappeared into the purple clouds above. Was not a tall woman. Back on the Korean colony of Nu, her younger siblings had started calling her Little Mother when she was only 15 years old. She had raised all 5 of them after their parents died in the mining accident. She had learned to cook, to clean, to break up fights, and to stay calm when everything around her was falling apart. Now she was 28, and the Galactic Coalition had sent her to the most dangerous planet in the known universe. There were predators. Everyone knew this. They stood 7 feet tall on average, with bodies that looked like someone had mixed a wolf and a lion and then covered the result in smooth black fur. Their eyes glowed soft yellow in the dark. Their claws could cut through steel. Their teeth were the stuff of nightmares across 100 worlds, and was here to babysit their children. The transport door opened with a hiss and picked up her single bag. She had not brought much. A few changes of clothes, some ration bars, and a small box of personal items that she kept locked at all times. She walked down the ramp and felt the warm air of Prime wrap around her like a blanket. A warrior was waiting for her at the bottom. He was enormous, easily 8 feet tall, with scars running across his muzzle and one ear that looked like something had tried to bite it off. His name tag said Commander in both script and standard galactic. Stopped walking, she said. That is a Korean name. The Massive looked down at her. His yellow eyes blinked slowly. I was raised by humans, he said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. A Korean family on Station 12 adopted me when I was very young. My birth parents died in the border wars. Nodded. She did not say she was sorry. She knew what it was like to lose parents, and she knew that sometimes sorry was not the word people needed to hear. I am Park, she said instead. I am here for the Cubs. Commander studied her for a long moment. She was so small compared to him. Her head barely reached his chest. Her skin was soft, her nails were flat, and she had no fangs at all. On any other world she would be prey. But there was something in her eyes that made him pause. It was not fear. It was not even courage. It was patience. The kind of patience that came from years of waiting, watching, and refusing to break. Follow me, he said finally. I will take you to the compound. They walked through the forest on a path made of smooth white stone. The trees around them were alive with sounds. Birds that were not quite birds sang from the branches. Small creatures that might have been rodents through the undergrowth. Everything on this planet was bigger, louder, and more dangerous than its Earth equivalent. Did not seem bothered. She walked with her hands clasped behind her back, looking around with quiet interest. "The High Council does not trust you," Commander said suddenly. "I know," replied. "They think you will fail. They think the cubs will eat you within a week." "I know that too." Commander glanced down at her. "And yet you came anyway." Smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "I have raised 5 children, Commander. One of them bit me so hard that I needed 12 stitches. Another threw a knife at my head because I told him he could not have dessert before dinner. I think I can handle a few cubs." The commander did not know what to say to that. He had read her file. He knew about the incident where she had walked into a room full of rioting aliens and calmed them down with nothing but her voice and a bag of dried fruit. He knew she had scored the highest marks in xenobiology that the Academy had ever seen. But knowing something and understanding it were two different things. The compound came into view through the trees. It was a massive structure of black stone, built low to the ground with thick walls and narrow windows. It looked more like a fortress than a home, but that was the way. Everything they built was designed to survive attack. "The cubs are inside," Commander said. "There are 6 of them. The eldest he is 10 cycles old, which is about 10 human years. He is proud and protective. He will test you first." "And the others?" "Is 8. She is clever, too clever. She will try to trick you rather than fight you. The twins are and Myra both 6. They are chaos made flesh, is 5. She is shy and watches everything, and is the youngest at 4. He is small, but he fears nothing." Memorized each name as he spoke. She had always been good with names. They reached the main door, and Commander placed his paw on a scanner. The door slid open silently. The inside of the compound was surprisingly comfortable. The floors were covered with thick rugs. The walls were hung with tapestries that showed hunting scenes and battle victories. There was a large common room with cushions scattered everywhere, and could see a kitchen through an archway on the left. But there were no cubs in sight. Could feel them, though. She could feel eyes watching her from the shadows. 6 pairs of glowing yellow eyes, hidden in dark corners and behind furniture. "They are watching you," Commander said quietly. "They want to see how you react." Did not look around. She did not try to find them. Instead, she walked calmly to the center of the room and set her bag down on one of the cushions. "My name is," she said to the empty room. Her voice was steady and warm. "I am going to be staying here for a while. I hope we can be friends." Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. Commander watched for another moment, then turned to leave. "I will check on you in 3 days," he said. "Good luck, Lieutenant Park." The door closed behind him, and was alone with 6 predator cubs who wanted to see her fail. She smiled to herself and began to unpack. That night made herself a simple dinner from the supplies in the kitchen. She ate slowly, sitting at the large table by herself. She knew the cubs were still watching. She could see the faint glow of their eyes in the darkness beyond the kitchen doorway. After dinner, she washed her dishes, found her assigned room, and prepared for bed. Her room was small but comfortable, with a thick mattress on a low frame and a window that looked out over the amber forest. She placed her boots by the door as she always did. They were standard military issue, sturdy and reliable. She had walked 1,000 miles in those boots. Then she turned off the light and went to sleep. And when she woke up the next morning, her boots were gone. Sat up in bed and looked at the empty spot by the door. She could see scratch marks on the floor where small claws had scraped against the stone. There were tiny tufts of black fur near the doorframe. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then she got up, put on her backup sandals, and went to make breakfast. The cubs had declared war, and Park was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her panic. The cubs expected to scream. They expected her to run around the compound searching for her boots, to cry, to beg, to show weakness. That was what prey did when predators took something from them. That was how the game was supposed to work. But did none of these things. She walked into the kitchen in her sandals, humming a soft tune that her mother had taught her when she was very small. It was an old Korean lullaby about the moon and the stars and a rabbit who lived in the sky. She had sung it to her siblings every night after their parents died. The cubs watched from their hiding spots as she opened the food storage and pulled out ingredients. They watched as she cooked eggs and rice, as she sliced vegetables and arranged everything neatly on a plate. They watched as she sat down at the big table and ate her breakfast slowly, peacefully, as if nothing in the world was wrong. The eldest was the most confused. He had planned the boot theft himself. He had sent Little to do the actual styling because was the smallest and the quietest. The plan had been perfect. The human should have been angry. The human should have been scared. Instead, the human was eating breakfast and humming to herself. "What is she doing?" whispered from behind the couch where she was hiding. "I do not know," whispered back. "Maybe she has not noticed yet." "She noticed," said quietly. "Was hiding behind a curtain and she had watched look at the empty spot where her boots had been. She saw, she just does not care." This was wrong. This was all wrong. Prey was supposed to care when you took their things. The cubs held a meeting that afternoon while was in the garden looking at the flowers. They gathered in s room, all 6 of them, sitting in a circle on the floor. "We need to try harder," said. His young voice was serious and determined. She did not react to the boots. "We need to take something else." Her suggested. Her eyes were bright with scheming. "She uses it all the time. She will definitely react if we take that." "I can get it," said eagerly. His twin sister Myra nodded beside him. The twins did everything together, including getting into trouble. Sat in the corner, chewing on a piece of dried meat. He was the smallest of them all, barely 2 feet tall, with fur that was still more gray than black. "I liked her song," he said. Everyone ignored him. That night, the twins snuck into his room while she was in the bathroom. They found her on the small table beside her bed and carried it away between them. They were very proud of themselves. The next morning, discovered her was missing. She also discovered that it had been chewed. The cubs had apparently gotten curious about what it tasted like. She sighed, picked up the damaged device, and tried to turn it on. The screen flickered but still worked. Most of her files were safe. "Well," she said to the empty room, "at least you did not eat it completely." She put the in her bag and went to make breakfast. The cubs were starting to get frustrated. Over the next 2 days, they stole everything they could get their paws on. Her pillow was dragged outside and shredded in the garden. Her ration bars were taken from the kitchen, and the wrappers were scattered across the common room like confetti. Her hairbrush disappeared. Her favorite pen vanished. Even her backup sandals were taken and hidden somewhere she could not find them. Through all of it, never yelled. She never cried. She never even raised her voice. She adapted instead. She started leaving decoy items around the compound. Old socks that she did not care about. Empty containers that looked interesting. Broken electronics that seemed valuable but were actually just garbage. The cubs took everything, every single decoy. They were so busy stealing the fake treasures that they did not notice had started hiding her real belongings in places they would never look. "She is playing with us," realized one evening. The clever cub sat in her room, surrounded by old socks and empty boxes, and felt something she had never felt before. Respect. The human was not prey. Prey did not fight back. Prey did not set traps. Prey did not sit calmly reading a book while 6 apex predators circled around trying to intimidate her. Was something else entirely. It was on the 4th night that everything changed. Had come up with a new plan. She had found a ventilation shaft that ran through the compound, and she had discovered that it led directly to the storage room where kept her locked box. The box that she never opened in front of anyone. The box that she protected more carefully than anything else. "If we get that box," said, "she will have to react. It must be important." Did not want to help with this plan. She had been watching more closely than any of the others, and she had started to feel something strange. Something that made her want to stay close to the human instead of far away, but said they all had to participate and was too shy to argue. The shaft was narrow and dark, was the smallest after, so she was sent in first to scout the path. She crawled through the metal tunnel on her belly, her claws clicking softly against the surface. She was halfway to the storage room when she got stuck. At first thought she could wiggle free, but the more she moved, the space seemed to get. The walls pressed against her sides. The darkness closed in around her. She opened her mouth to call for help, but only a small whimper came out. She was trapped. She was trapped and alone, and the air was getting thinner and nobody knew where she was. And she was going to die here in this dark metal tube, and the voice came from somewhere ahead. It was soft and warm and calm. Can you hear me? Make a sound if you can hear me." Whimpered again, louder this time. "Good girl, that is very good. I am going to come and get you, okay? Just stay still and keep breathing. Can you do that for me?" Had heard the noise from her room. She had followed the sound to the ventilation shaft and figured out where must be stuck. Now she was crawling through the narrow tunnel herself, even though she was bigger than, and it was even more of a tight fit for her. "I cannot breathe," whispered. "It is too small, I cannot breathe." "Yes, you can," said. Her voice was still calm, still steady. "You are breathing right now. I can hear you. Just take one breath at a time. In and out, in and out. That is all you have to do." Reached and found the problem. The cub's fur had gotten caught on a loose screw in the shaft wall. She was not really stuck. She just could not move without pulling her own fur out. "I am going to touch you now," said. "I am going to free your fur. It might hurt a little bit, but only for a second. Can you be brave for me?" Was shaking, but she nodded. Worked quickly and carefully. She loosened the fur from the screw, freeing bit by bit. When the cub was finally loose, guided her forward through the shaft until they reached an opening. They crawled out together into the storage room, collapsed on the floor, breathing hard, her whole body trembling. Sat down beside her and did not say anything. She just waited. After a long time, looked up at her. "Are you going to tell the adults?" If the warriors found out about this, would be punished. All the cubs would be punished. Discipline was harsh and painful. Shook her head. "No," she said, "this is our secret." Stared at her. This made no sense. They had stolen her things. They had tried to make her miserable. They had just attempted to break into her private belongings. Why would she protect them? "Why?" asked. Smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but it was real. "Because I was young once too," she said. "And I made mistakes too, and someone gave me a second chance." She reached out and gently smoothed down the fur on's head. "Besides, you remind me of my youngest sister. She was always getting stuck in places she should not have been." Something broke inside then. Something hard and protective and scared. She did not understand what was happening, but she knew that this human, this small soft creature with no claws and no fangs, had just crawled into a dark tunnel to save her. From that night on, followed everywhere. And in his report to the Galactic Coalition, Commander wrote, The human does not establish dominance through aggression. She establishes it through patience and kindness. This is unprecedented among prey species. I am beginning to think we may have misjudged humanity entirely. Something changed in the compound after the night in the ventilation shaft. The cubs did not stop their mischief completely, but they became less aggressive about it. The stealing continued, but the stolen items were no longer destroyed. They were just hidden, and sometimes they were even returned quietly when no one was looking. Had become shadow. Wherever the human went, the small cub followed. She sat at its feet when read her books. She stood beside when cooked meals. She slept outside's door at night, curled up on a cushion that had placed there for her. The other cubs did not understand this, was particularly confused and annoyed. "She is prey," he said to one morning when was in the garden. "Why do you follow her like she is your pack leader?" Just looked at him with her big yellow eyes. "She saved me," she said quietly. "She came into the dark to save me. Pack does that." Had no answer for this. Noticed the tension between the cubs, but she did not interfere. She had learned long ago that children needed to work things out among themselves sometimes. Her job was to be present, to be available, to be a safe place they could come to when they were ready. Instead of pushing, she started offering. "Would anyone like to learn a game?" she asked one afternoon. She was sitting in the common room with a small ball in her hands, was already beside her, of course. The others were scattered around the room, pretending not to listen. Myra, one of the twins, raised her head. "What kind of game?" "It is called catch," said. "You throw the ball to someone and they catch it, and then they throw it to someone else. Simple but fun." "That sounds boring," said, but he moved a little closer anyway. Threw the ball gently too, caught it in her small paws, looking surprised and pleased. She threw it to Myra. Myra threw it too, and before long all 6 cubs were playing catch with the human, laughing and shouting and bumping into each other. It was the first time had heard them laugh. After catch, she taught them hide and seek. This was a mistake. The cubs were too good at hiding. Children were born with the instinct to stalk and conceal themselves. They could fit into spaces that seemed impossible. They could hold perfectly still for minutes at a time. The first game lasted 3 hours because could not find, who had somehow climbed onto the roof and hidden herself among the decorative stonework. But did not give up. She searched and searched until she found every single cub. And when the game was over, she collapsed on a cushion and declared them all champions. "You are very bad at seeking," said. He climbed onto the cushion beside her and sat down, his small body warm against her leg. "I know," admitted. "Humans are not very good at seeing in the dark. Our eyes do not glow like yours." "That seems like a weakness," said from across the room. He was trying to sound dismissive, but he had moved closer to the group. It is, agreed. Humans have many weaknesses. We cannot see well in the dark. We cannot run very fast. We have no claws or fangs. We get cold easily and hot easily and sick easily. Then how did your species survive? Asked. She was genuinely curious now. Smiled. We are very, very stubborn, she said, and we take care of each other. When one human is weak, another human helps them. We work together. We never give up. That night told them stories. She told them about Earth, the human. She told them about mountains so tall that their peaks were always covered in snow. She told them about oceans so deep that no one had ever seen the bottom. She told them about forests and deserts and cities that sparkled with lights at night. But the stories they loved most were the monster stories. There were creatures called wolves, said. They were predators. They hunted in packs and had sharp teeth and could run for miles without getting tired. The cubs leaned forward. This sounded like something they could respect. Humans used to be afraid of wolves, continued. They wrote stories about them. Scary stories about monsters in the woods who ate children who wandered too far from home. What happened to the wolves? Asked. We made friends with them. The cubs stared at her. Humans cannot do that, said. You cannot befriend an apex predator. We did, said simply. We call them dogs now. They live in our homes. They sleep in our beds. They protect our children. Some of them are very small and fluffy and wear little sweaters in the winter. There was a long silence. You turned apex predators into pets, said slowly. Not pets, corrected. Friends, family, pack. She looked around at the 6 cubs who were sitting in a circle around her, their yellow eyes wide. Humans do not defeat our enemies by being stronger, she said. We defeat them by making them love us. Nobody knew what to say to that. The days passed and the compound began to feel different, warmer, brighter. The cubs still stole things sometimes, but now it felt more like a game than a war. Would find her hairbrush hidden under a cushion and she would say, "Oh no, the bandits have struck again," in a dramatic voice that made giggle. Was the last to let down his guard. He was the eldest. He was supposed to protect the others. He was supposed to be strong and fierce and never show weakness. He had promised himself that he would not trust the human. He would not like her. He would not let her become important to him. But every day he watched her. He watched her cook meals for the cubs without ever being asked. He watched her clean up their messes without complaining. He watched her sit with during thunderstorms because was afraid of loud noises. He watched her teach how to count in human numbers. He watched her braid Myra's fur because Myra had seen a picture of braids in one of his books. One evening, decided to test her properly. He walked up to her when she was reading alone in the common room. He stood at his full height, which was already 5 feet tall even though he was only 10. He bared his teeth, which were sharp and white. He let out a growl from deep in his chest. He looked up from her book. She said calmly, "I helped raise 5 human children. One of them bit me so hard I needed stitches. Another threw a kitchen knife at my head because I would not let him stay up late. My youngest brother once locked me in a closet for 3 hours because I told him he could not keep a wild bird in his room." She turned a page in her book. "You are going to have to try harder than that." Stood there, his growl fading. He did not know what to do. She had not screamed. She had not run. She had not even flinched. She had compared him to human children. Small, soft human children. He should have been angry. Instead, he felt something strange. Something that might have been respect. "Were your siblings really that bad?" he asked. Closed her book and looked at him properly for the first time. "They were," she said, "but they were also wonderful. They made me laugh every day. They drew pictures for me and picked flowers for me and told me they loved me even when I was tired and grumpy." She smiled. "Children are like that, all children, in every species. They are chaotic and messy and exhausting, but they are also the best thing in the universe." Sat down across from her. It was the closest he had ever voluntarily gotten to her. "Tell me more about them," he said. "Your siblings." I so did. Meanwhile, in a corner of the room, found locked box. It had been moved from the storage room to her bedroom, and somehow it had ended up under a pile of cushions in the common room. The lock was broken. It must have happened during one of the raids. Opened the box carefully. Inside he found pictures. Pictures of humans with faces like smiling and laughing. There was a worn stuffed rabbit that was missing one ear, and there was a letter written in human script that he could not read. He did not take anything. He did not even touch the items. Instead, he curled up next to the box and fell asleep guarding it. When found him there later that night, she knelt down beside him. She looked at the open box, at the pictures of her family, at the letter from her mother who had died so long ago. And for the first time since she arrived on Prime, she cried. Found her like that. He saw the tears on her face, the way her shoulders shook silently. He had never seen a human cry before. He did not know what it meant. "Are you hurt?" he asked, alarmed. Shook her head. "No," she whispered, "I am just remembering." Looked at the pictures in the box. He saw a woman who looked like an older version of, with the same eyes and the same smile. "Your mother?" he asked. He nodded. Sat down beside her. He did not say anything. He did not need to. He just sat there, a young predator keeping watch over a crying human, while Tiny slept peacefully between them. It was the first time had ever protected a human. It would not be the last. The warning came without any sign. Was in the kitchen making lunch when every light in the compound turned red. A loud alarm began to wail through the building, and a voice spoke from the speakers in a language she did not understand. She ran to the communication panel on the wall and pressed the translation button. Toxic storm approaching. Category 5. All residents must proceed to underground bunker within 30 minutes. Repeat. Toxic storm approaching. All residents must proceed to underground bunker within 30 minutes. His heart began to beat faster. She had read about the toxic storms of Prime during her training. They were massive clouds of poisonous gas that rolled across the planet several times a year. The gas could kill an adult in minutes. A human would die much faster. She had 30 minutes to get 6 cubs to safety. She shouted, "Everyone, come to the kitchen now." The cubs appeared from various parts of the compound. They had heard the alarm too, and their ears were flat against their heads with fear. Even looked scared, though he was trying hard to hide it. "What is happening?" Myra asked. Her voice was trembling. "A storm is coming," said. She kept her voice calm, even though her insides were churning. "We need to get to the bunker. Everyone knows where the bunker is, right?" The cubs nodded. The bunker was a large, underground room on the other side of the compound, built into the base of a small hill. It was designed to protect the residents from exactly this kind of emergency. "Good," said. "Then we need to go now. Is everyone here, Myra?" As she counted them quickly. "Good, everyone is here. Let us go." They ran to the main door, pushed it open and looked outside. Her heart sank. The path to the bunker was covered with sharp black rocks, volcanic glass, she remembered from her briefing. It covered large parts of Prime. They did not mind walking on it because their paws were thick and tough, but human feet were soft. The glass would cut through her sandals like they were made of paper. And her boots were still missing. Looked down at her feet. She was wearing thin indoor slippers. They would provide no protection at all. She looked at the path. She looked at the sky, where dark purple clouds were beginning to gather on the horizon. She looked at 6 small cubs who were depending on her to keep them safe. There was no time to search for her boots. There was no time to find another solution. There was only time to move. She knelt down and pulled off her slippers. Then she tore a strip of fabric from the bottom of her shirt and began wrapping it around her feet. It would not protect her much, but it was better than nothing. "What are you doing?" asked, watching her with wide eyes. "Making do," said. "The boots are gone, so I will have to be careful. You cubs can run ahead. Your paws will be fine on the glass." "But your feet will be cut," said. Her voice was very small. "Yes," agreed. "They probably will, but that is okay. Cuts heal. Now come on, we need to go." She stood up, ready to run, ready to bleed. but before she could take a single step, disappeared. He called, "We do not have time for this, we have to go," but was already gone, vanished around a corner of the building. Then ran after her, and Myra and only and remained, standing beside with confused expressions. "What are they doing?" asked, and did not answer. They did not know. The seconds ticked by. The clouds on the horizon grew darker, could feel panic rising in her chest. If the cubs did not come back soon, they would all be trapped outside when the storm hit. Then she saw them. Came running around the corner first. In her mouth she carried something black and familiar, left boot. Right behind her came. He was carrying the right boot. Myra followed with a tangled mess of laces in her jaws. Appeared next, holding what looked like the insoles. And last, running as fast as his short legs could carry him, came. In his tiny mouth was the tongue of the left boot. Apparently, it had been hidden separately from the rest. They laid the pieces at his feet one by one, assembling the boots like a puzzle. Their ears were pressed flat. Their tails were low. They could not meet her eyes. Looked down at the boots. Her boots. The boots she had walked 1,000 miles in. The boots these small creatures had stolen from her on her very first night. They had not just hidden them. They had taken them apart. Each cub had kept a different piece. And now they were giving them back. I spoke first. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We are sorry." And Myra nodded together. "We are sorry," they echoed. I cleared his throat. "We should not have taken your things. We were testing you. We wanted to see if you were weak." "You are not weak," added quietly. Little just pressed himself against leg and made a small whimpering sound. Knelt down so she was at their level. The storm was coming. They needed to move. Every second mattered. But some things mattered more than seconds. "You absolute little monsters," she said. Her voice was trembling, but she was smiling. "Do you know how much trouble you have caused me?" The cubs flinched. "Do you know how many times I had to walk around in sandals that gave me blisters?" The cubs looked at the ground. "Do you know," continued, "how much I love you anyway?" Their heads snapped up. Opened her arms, and 6 predator cubs crashed into her at once. She hugged them all, as many as she could hold, feeling their warm fur against her skin and their small hearts beating fast. "Okay," she said after a moment. "Now we really need to run." She put on her boots, her wonderful, complete, slightly chewed boots. Then she picked up in one arm and in the other. They were the smallest and the slowest. "You lead the way. You know the path better than I do. Count heads. Make sure no one falls behind. Twins, watch our backs." The cubs snapped into action. They moved like a unit, like a team, like a pack. They ran. The volcanic glass crunched under's boots. The purple clouds swirled overhead, getting closer every second. The air began to smell strange, sharp and metallic. Ran ahead, his young legs pumping, finding the safest path through the rocks, counted constantly under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The twins kept looking over their shoulders, watching for danger. Ran with the two smallest cubs in her arms. They were heavier than human children would be, but she did not care. Her arms burned and her legs ached and her lungs screamed for air, but she did not stop. She would not stop. The bunker came into view. It was built into the side of a hill, with a heavy metal door that stood open, waiting for them. "Go," shouted everyone inside. Reached the door first and held it open. Dove through, still counting. The twins tumbled in together. Was last, carrying and her boots finally touching the smooth floor of the bunker. Slammed the door shut behind them. The locks engaged with a heavy click. And outside the storm hit. They could hear it through the thick walls, a sound like screaming wind and boiling acid. The lights flickered once, twice, then held steady. The air filtration system hummed to life. They were safe. Set and down on the floor and then collapsed herself. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling, breathing hard. 6 small bodies gathered around her. "Did we make it?" Myra asked. "We made it," confirmed. "Because of you," said. His voice was strange, thick with something. "You were going to run through the glass for us. You were going to let your feet get cut to pieces just to keep us safe." Lifted her head and looked at him. "Of course I was," she said. "You are my responsibility. You are my cubs." The words hung in the air. My cubs. No one had ever called them that before. Not even their own parents, who loved them but were also warriors, who expressed affection through training and discipline rather than soft words. Began to cry. It was a small, hiccuping sound that he tried to hide by pressing his face into his side. "I do not understand," said, his voice cracked. "Why do you care about us? We were terrible to you. We stole your things. We tried to scare you. We tried to make you leave." Sat up and looked at all 6 of them. These small predators with their sharp teeth and glowing eyes and soft hearts. "Do you want to know a secret?" she asked. They nodded. "I was scared on my first day here. Very scared. I was alone on a strange planet, surrounded by creatures who could kill me without even trying. I did not know if I would survive." The cubs stared at her. They had never imagined that she could be scared. "But then I met you," continued. "And yes, you were terrible, but you were also just children, scared children testing the new person in their home. I have seen that before. I have been that before." She reached out and ruffled his fur. "I was not going to give up on you. I never give up on my family." "Family," repeated. The word sounded different when she said it, fuller. Family, confirmed. Now, who wants to hear a story while we wait for the storm to pass? All 6 paws went up. And in the bunker beneath the screaming storm, a human woman sat surrounded by 6 predator cubs and told them stories about a world called Earth, where the monsters had become friends, and the weak had become strong, and love was the most dangerous weapon of all. The storm lasted 3 days. When the bunker doors finally opened, the world outside looked different. The toxic clouds had washed over everything, leaving a thin layer of gray dust on every surface. But the sky was clear again, and the twin suns shone down warm and golden. Stepped outside first, with 6 cubs pressed close behind her. They had spent 3 days together in that small underground room, and something had changed between them. Something permanent. They walked back to the compound together, the cubs clustering around like she was the center of their universe. Walked on her right side, walked on her left. The twins brought up the rear, held onto the hem of shirt, and rode on her shoulders, his small paws tangled in her hair. The compound had survived the storm without damage. The thick walls had held, just as they were designed to do. They cleaned up together, swept the floors while the cubs wiped down the walls, carried water from the storage tanks, organized the supplies, even little helped, dragging a cloth across the lower sections of the furniture with fierce determination. It was not work, it was pack activity, it was family. 2 weeks later, the warriors returned. Heard the ships before she saw them. A deep rumbling sound that made the windows vibrate. She stepped outside and watched as 3 massive transport vessels descended from the sky, landing in the clearing beyond the amber forest. The cubs heard it too, and they came running to stand beside her. "Our parents are back," said. His voice was strange, half excited, half something else. "Yes," agreed. "They will be happy to see you." Did not answer. None of the cubs did. The warriors came through the forest in a long line. They were huge and battle-scarred, their black fur marked with the white lines of old wounds. At the front walked a massive female with a silver streak running down her back. High Chieftain, the leader of the people. The cubs' parents were among the warriors. Could tell which ones they were by the way the cubs tensed beside her. There was a tall male with proud bearing, a sleek female with clever eyes, pairs and singles, all of them looking toward the compound with expressions that could not read. High Chieftain reached the compound first. She stopped a few feet from and looked down at her with ancient yellow eyes. "Oh, you are the human," she said. It was not a question. "I am Lieutenant Park," replied. She kept her voice steady, her posture straight. She knew that predators respected strength. "We have heard reports," the chieftain continued. "The cubs are healthy, they are unharmed, they survived the storm. Her eyes narrowed. "How is this possible? You are prey. You should have failed." Before could answer, stepped forward. It was a breach of protocol. Cubs did not speak before high chieftains. Cubs did not even make eye contact with the leader of their people, but stood tall and lifted his chin and looked directly at the most powerful in the galaxy. "She is Pack," he said. His young voice was clear and strong. "She bled for us." The chieftain's ears flicked forward. "Explain." Told her everything. He told her about the boots, about the stealing, about patience. He told her about the games and the stories. He told her about in the ventilation shaft. He told her about the storm, about wrapping her feet in rags, about her readiness to run across broken glass to save them. When he finished, there was silence. The chieftain looked at Sfeet, was wearing her boots now, but the chieftain could smell something. Old blood, maybe. The memory of wounds that had healed. "Show me your feet," the chieftain commanded. Hesitated, then knelt down and removed her boots. Her feet were covered in small scars, cuts from the volcanic glass that had sliced through her makeshift bandages during the run to the bunker. They had healed, but the marks remained. The warriors behind the chieftain murmured. A human had bled for cubs. A prey species had wounded herself to protect predator children. "You ran through the glass," the chieftain said slowly. "There was no other choice," replied. "They needed to be safe." "There was another choice. You could have run alone. You could have saved yourself and left the cubs behind. You are faster than a child. You would have made it to the bunker in time." Looked up at the chieftain with something like confusion. "Why would I do that? They are my responsibility." "They are not your young. They are not your blood. They are not even your species." Stood up and faced the chieftain directly. She was so small compared to the massive predator. Her head barely reached the chieftain's chest. She had no claws, no fangs, no weapons of any kind. But she did not back down. "On Earth," she said, "we have a saying, blood does not make family, love makes family." She looked at the 6 cubs who stood beside her, all of them watching with wide eyes. "I love these children. I would die for them. And I do not care if that makes sense to you or not." The silence stretched out. Then, very slowly, High Chieftain did something that no one had ever seen her do before. She laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that shook her whole body. The warriors behind her stared in shock. The cubs pressed closer too, uncertain what was happening. "I understand now," the chieftain said when her laughter faded. "I understand why the humans survive. I understand why they spread across the galaxy while older species faded and died." She looked at with new eyes. "You do not conquer with strength. You conquer with this." She pressed a massive paw against her own chest. "You make us love you. You make us pack. And then you make us yours." Commander stepped forward from the back of the group. The human-raised had been observing everything. "I have prepared my final report for the Galactic Coalition," he said. "With your permission, High Chieftain, I would like to share its conclusion." The chieftain nodded. Commander looked at the cubs, at the assembled warriors. "The believed humans were prey because they are small, soft, and lack natural weapons," he said. "We did not understand. Humans do not need claws. Humans do not need fangs. Humans have something far more dangerous." He paused. "They make you love them. They make you pack. And once you are pack, they will walk across broken glass to keep you safe." He turned to face the High Chieftain directly. The cubs did not adopt Lieutenant Park. She adopted them. And that is why humanity should terrify us all, not because they can destroy us, but because they can make us theirs. The warriors shifted uneasily. The cubs stood taller and just smiled. 6 months later, the tour was officially over. The coalition sent a message saying a shuttle was available to take her back to New. Her family was waiting for her. Her old life was waiting for her. She filed for an extension, her sixth one. The compound had become home. The cubs had become family. She could not imagine leaving them now. Was almost as tall as she was. He had started calling her small mother as a joke, but the joke had become something real. Had begun studying xenobiology, inspired by stories about other species. The twins had calmed down slightly, channeling their chaos into competitive games instead of destruction. Had started speaking more, coming out of her shell bit by bit. And had lost his first baby tooth. He had given it to. She had not known what to say. In culture, a first tooth was precious. It was usually kept by the parents, a memento of their child's growth. Had no reason to give it to her. But he had pressed the small white fang into her palm with his tiny paws, and looked up at her with his big yellow eyes. "For you," he said, "so you remember, pack marks pack." Had cried then. She had picked him up and held him close and cried into his soft fur while he patted her back with clumsy paws. Now the tooth hung on a charm attached to her boot laces. She touched it sometimes when she needed to remember why she was here. It was evening in the compound. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Sat in the garden, a human children's book open in her lap. The story was about a rabbit who wanted to touch the moon. She had read it to her siblings 100 times when they were small. 6 cubs sprawled around her on the grass. Was asleep in her lap, curled into a small ball of gray-black fur. Leaned against her side, eyes half closed. The twins lay on their stomachs, their tails flicking in lazy patterns. Sat cross-legged, pretending to be too old for bedtime stories but listening anyway. And sat behind, his back to hers, watching the forest for any sign of danger. Her boots sat by the garden door, untouched. Well, mostly untouched. Tooth charm glinted in the fading light, had tied a small bead to one of the laces last week, had carved a tiny mark into the heel, the symbol for pack. The boots were hers, but they belonged to all of them now. Opened the book and began to read. Once upon a time, there was a rabbit who lived on Earth. Every night she looked up at the moon and dreamed of touching its silver light. The cubs settled in to listen. And in the amber forest of Prime, as the sun set and the stars began to appear, a human woman and her 6 predator children sat together in the garden and were family. This was how humanity conquered the galaxy. Not with weapons, not with war. With love. With stubbornness. With bedtime stories and stolen boots and small teeth given as gifts. Pack marks pack. And once you were pack forever.